My name is Curtis Chang, and welcome to Redeeming Babel, where our mission is to provide biblical thinking in a confusing world. In this video, I want to address the confusion some Christians have about fake news, especially when it comes to COVID. I want to offer a simple principle for Christians to judge information sources. Most importantly, I want to encourage Christians to apply this principle with our own Christian leaders. When it comes to information about COVID, a simple and critical principle is found in Proverbs 14:25, which says, "A truthful witness saves lives, but one who breathes out lies betrays the people." A witness is the biblical term for a public information source. Proverbs is saying you will know which news sources are truthful by their track record. Their track record will show their information helped save lives. Conversely, it's implied that you'll know an information source is breathing out lies, is fake news, if it does the opposite. Their track record will betray the people and not help save lives. COVID presents a critical opportunity to apply Proverbs 14:25 to today's news sources. We should all be examining our news sources for their track record on COVID. Did your news source warn you about the seriousness of COVID and the need to take precautions? Or did your primary news source downplay its seriousness and the need for precautions? There are news sources consumed by many Christians that consistently downplayed the threat of COVID for months, long after the pandemic began. In doing so, these news sources failed the Proverbs test badly. At the time of this recording, 2 million people around the world have died from COVID. In the US, the death toll is over 400,000 Americans. More Americans have died from COVID in 1 year than died in combat during 4 years of World War II. News sources that downplayed COVID for months betrayed the people, betrayed the public's need to be warned to save lives. The purpose of Proverbs is to give God's people practical tips on how to avoid making the same mistakes in life. This means that you should stop listening to those information sources that consistently downplayed COVID. Otherwise, you are at risk of being betrayed again with the next major health threat. It is important to evaluate our news sources. It is even more important to evaluate our Christian leaders, especially Christian leaders who claim to have prophetic authority. The Bible is clear on this. Just like Proverbs 14:25 insists on paying attention to the track record of news sources, Deuteronomy 18:22 insists we have to pay attention to the track record of prophets. The passage states, "If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, so do not be alarmed." Evaluating the track record of self-proclaimed prophets is especially important during this pandemic. During the pandemic, some Christian leaders have told their people that it is not necessary for them to obey public health regulations. Those same leaders are now saying it's not necessary to take the vaccine. They have predicted that God will protect all their people from the virus if they reject regulations and the vaccine. For example, the megachurch pastor John MacArthur has mocked and publicly defied public health rules with this kind of prophecy. Sadly, in case after case, when we apply the Deuteronomy test to these prophets, they have failed the test badly. Their predictions that God would protect everyone who rejects public health recommendations has not come true. For example, Pastor Ronnie Hampton of New Vision Community Church in Louisiana told his followers to not worry about the virus, to keep gathering in large meetings, to reject the vaccine when it comes out. Why? Because God would protect everyone who did so. He died of the coronavirus. The Christian musician Landon Spradlin called COVID-19 fake news. He died of COVID-19. This tragic pattern has happened repeatedly. In one Pentecostal denomination, more than 30 pastors who claim this kind of prophetic authority have themselves died from the virus. This abuse of prophetic authority has caused suffering in entire congregations. Studies by the CDC have traced in detail how Christian religious services with singing and close physical contact are especially likely to become super spreader events. For example, there was one church gathering in North Carolina that led to 187 cases and 8 deaths. One study back in July of 2020 identified 650 similar cases linked to Christian facilities. If some Christian leader is claiming prophetic authority to encourage you now to reject the COVID vaccine because you'll be protected by God, then you have a serious responsibility under Deuteronomy 18:22. You should recognize that such prophecies are not coming true. Their track record is false. Those prophecies are not from the Lord. According to the Bible, you should disregard their instructions. Let me repeat. If a Christian leader is claiming prophetic authority to encourage you to reject the COVID vaccine, that prophet is speaking falsely. The Bible and the track record indicate this. Now, I recognize that it is uncomfortable to disregard a news source you've trusted for a while, and that it is even more uncomfortable to disregard a Christian leader you've listened to for a long time. But the Bible gives instructions like Proverbs 14:25 and Deuteronomy 18:22 precisely because God knew that fake news and false prophets were possible. Now, the answer is not to distrust every institution and every leader. We do need to trust others to know things in the world. That's unavoidable. But we have to take care to trust the right institution and the right leaders. We do this by paying attention to the track record of their predictions. COVID is a wake-up call for everyone. Let's pay attention. The pandemic has spread person to person. Ending the pandemic will also spread person to person, as each of us shares the necessary truth about the vaccine to those who are unsure. If you know someone who would benefit from this video, please take the time to share it with them.